Good evening and welcome to Freedom is a Constant Struggle on this Black August 6, 2015, the 70th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima in 1945, killing 140,000 people. 3 days later, another war crime was committed when the U.S. dropped a bomb on Nagasaki, killing another 70,000 human beings. Not only has the U.S. refused to apologize for these atrocities, instead of never again, they're continuing to engage in a nuclear arms race, spending trillions on new weaponry to further enrich the military offense industry. We must fight for the abolition of nuclear weapons and power plants now. This evening's program is the first of two Black August specials honoring our Black freedom fighters and martyrs as we commemorate the 45th anniversary of the August 7th, 1970 Courthouse Slave Rebellion. The second will air on August 20th and will focus on the assassination of Soledad brother George Lester Jackson. August 8, 1978, 9 of our revolutionary sisters and brothers known as the Move 9 were viciously attacked by Philadelphia police who unleashed a barrage of gunfire at the poorly armed Move members defending their home. One officer was killed in friendly fire and 9 Move members were arrested and charged with the murder. Merle Africa and Phil Africa have died mysteriously in prison, leaving 7 Move members still locked up after 35 years for a crime they couldn't have committed.
Unfortunately for the police, the beating of Delbert Africa was caught on camera.
I went to exit the basement after a cop stuck his gun in the window, and is plainly seen on the later police videotape. And he told me, "Bring your black ass out here." I said, "I'm going out the front. Come out this way, I'll blow your damn head off." Boom. Obviously, I came out that way. And the next thing I remember was being dragged across Pearl Street by my hair by some cop. I don't know who. And then when they dragged me, got me up on the curb, then a bunch of them just started kicking.
Geist, Mulvihill, and Zagami were all brought up on charges of police brutality a few years later, but Judge Stanley Kubacki dismissed the case.
Only 2 days ago, 3 of the officers charged in the beating surrendered to assault charges. That sparked a protest by 500 fellow officers, pointing out they also wear blue. And the head of the police union gave his thoughts on those who beat Delbert Africa.
What they should have done is shot that goddamn bum, and then there would have been no trouble today.
I was seduced into the MOVE organization by the loveliness and goodness of its people and its members. I was probably enraged as well as sitting in a trial in an official capacity, objective as a journalist, and seeing that the law really didn't matter, that it didn't matter whether a man was innocent or guilty. It didn't matter what the law says your rights were. You just had 9 members of the MOVE organization being sentenced to 30 to 100 years for a crime that everybody knew they did not commit. I mean, 9 people cannot kill 1 man.
Of course, that was former Black Panther Mumia Abu-Jamal, videotaped while he was still on death row, where he spent 30 years before our campaign got him released to general population. Mumia remains weak, ill, and in the prison infirmary. 5 months after being admitted to the hospital with lethal blood sugar levels and in renal failure, he continues to have debilitating skin rashes, open wounds, and swelling across his lower extremities. Because of the filing of a lawsuit and our relentless demands for testing, diagnosis, and treatment, we finally know he has hepatitis C. Frankly, I believe they're trying to kill Mumia through medical malpractice since they didn't succeed in executing him. The powers that be want to silence him once and for all. We'll go now to video clips from Black August Pacifica radio archives, and you'll hear the voices of Ruchell Cinque McGee, George Lester Jackson, and individual narrators telling the story of August 7th, 1970. But before we go there, I want to give you a little introduction to those events. In a chain of events leading to August 7th, on January 13th, 1970, a month before Fred Billingsley was beaten and tear-gassed to death in his cell, a tower guard at Soledad State Prison had shot and killed 3 black captives on the yard, leaving them unattended to bleed to death. Cleveland Edwards, Sweet Jugs Miller, and the venerable leader W.L. Nolan, all active resistors in the Black liberation movement behind the walls. Others included George Jackson, Jeffrey Golden, Katari, and Hugo L.A. Pinel, Yogi Bear. After a kangaroo court at Soledad Prison returned the common verdict of justifiable homicide, and the murderer exonerated, another white racist guard was beaten and thrown from a tier to his death. 3 prisoners, Fleta Drumgo, John Cluchet, and George Jackson, were charged with the murder, precipitating the case of the Soledad brothers and a campaign to free them led by college professor and avowed communist Angela Davis and George's younger brother, Jonathan Jackson, 17, who also acted as her bodyguard. They were all eventually acquitted. Jackson posthumously, George Jackson. We'll go to a tape now and hear the voices of Ruchell, McGee, George, and others.
August, in both historic and contemporary African American history, is a month of meaning. It is a month of repression. August 1619, the first group of black laborers called indentured servants landed at Jamestown, Virginia. August 25th, 1967, classified FBI memos went out to all bureaus nationwide with plans to, quote, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize, unquote, black liberation movement groups. August 1968, the Newark, New Jersey Black Panther Party office was firebombed. August 25th, 1968, LA Black Panther Party members Steve Bartholomew, Robert Lawrence, and Tommy Lewis were murdered by the LAPD at a gas station. August 15th, 1969, Sylvester Bell, San Diego Black Panther Party member, murdered by the US organization. August 21st, 1971, Black Panther Party Field Marshal George L. Jackson assassinated at San Quentin Prison, California. 3 guards and 2 inmate turncoats were killed, 3 wounded. It is also a month of radical resistance. August 22nd, 1831, Nat Turner's rebellion rocked Southampton County, Virginia, and the entire South when slaves rose up and slew their white masters. August 30th, 1856, John Brown led an anti-slavery raid on a group of Missourians at Osawatomie, Kansas. August 7th, 1970, Jonathan Jackson, younger brother of Field Marshal George, raided the Marin County Courthouse in California, arming and freeing 3 black prisoners, taking the judge, prosecutor, and several jurors hostage. All except 1 prisoner were killed by police fire that perforated the escape vehicle. John was 17. And in an instance of resistance and repression, August 8th, 1978, after a 15-month armed police standoff with the Philadelphia-based Naturalist MOVE organization, the police raided MOVE, killing one of their own in police crossfire and charging 9 MOVE people with murder. The MOVE 9 in prisons across Pennsylvania are serving up to 100 years each. August, a month of injustice and divine justice, of repression and righteous rebellion, of individual and collective efforts to free the slaves and break the chains that bind us. August saw slaves and the grandsons of slaves strike out for their God-given right to freedom, as well as the awesome price, the ultimate price, always paid by those who would dare oppose the slave master's will.
Perjured testimony, tortured confessions, and double-dealing court-appointed public defenders, McGee was convicted of kidnap and robbery and sentenced to life in prison in 1963.
So what happens is that the lawyer, appointed by the court, gets up and enters a plea of guilt. His name is J. Stanley Brill, court-appointed public defender. And upon entering a plea of guilty, the district attorney tells the jurors to find me as Stewart guilty on the lawyer's plea of guilty. So this is what the jurors do. They goes and find us guilty on the lawyer's plea of guilty. But this plea of guilty was illegal because criminal, as according to criminal law, an attorney cannot plead for you. You see? So we was just getting a flim-flam trial. This is why they closed the court for trial. This is closed-door court. The trial is behind closed doors. Allow no one in except court officials.
But when McGee sought to appeal the robbery, kidnap, conviction, and life sentence, he was provided with an inaccurate, incomplete transcript of the 1963 court proceedings. Nevertheless, McGee did win a reversal of his original conviction, but in the second 1965 trial, he was again denied the right to defend himself and saddled with a court-appointed lawyer to misrepresent him. McGee also came before the same judge, Herbert V. Walker, who had chained and gagged him in the first trial, and once again, when McGee tried to defend himself, he was beaten and dragged from the courtroom.
All right, now, upon appealing, I received a transcript that was not the transcript of my trial, so I tried to drop the appeal. Actually, I tried to dismiss it on the grounds that I could not get a transcript after they had constantly refused me, after I tried to correct it. They has another court-appointed attorney to go down and get a transcript from Vestine Manicka, who's the court reporter. He files a brief in my name and brings out some little old flim-flam junk about consolidation of trial, which everyone knows that was illegal there, where they had consolidated Greenfield and Brown cases together and just made a joint trial, it was something that I was not even charged with. This is what it was. So I get back to the second trial. I tries to inquire, the court as to, the nature of the proceeding, what was happening here, because of suppression of evidence during the appeal process, there's automatically discharged. It's no second trial after one is proved, have been suppressing evidence,
But can you just say very quickly, why didn't you testify? I mean, why did you take the Fifth Amendment? And also, why did you...
Let me go into that, right. Well, this is where I was at, is that upon trying to make inquiry into the case, this is where I was beaten by the sheriff officer, shutting me off, silencing me. You see? So, after this, they taken me before the court, and Attorney Clayjack pleaded me not guilty by reason of insanity. Well, I never seen Clayjack before in my life. He never knew nothing about whether I'm crazy or what's happened, or whether I'm guilty of the charge or nothing. But he pleads me not guilty by reason of insanity. I objected to the plea. Now, the court ignores my plea. They consider my plea as frivolous or whatever it was, and my rights to plead was just, just disregarded. So they accepted this jump. So we get to trial, they get the juries, and they instruct the juries that I answer the plea to not guilty by reason of insanity. I object. They take some shackles and gags to me, charges me with making outbursts in the court, which was lawful objection. So what good would it do me to get on the witness stand and testify before something I know I'm in restraint and it's not going to do me no good? If I testify and do all to prove everything I want, there was no way for me to go free because the plea I'm not guilty by reason of insanity means only one thing. You're either insane or you're guilty.
As McGee has reiterated, the second trial merely served to make a new record using fraud to hide fraud in order to send him right back to prison. For 7 years, McGee tried to get the higher courts all the way up to the Supreme Court to expose Judge Walker's acts, but the courts refused to listen.
Judge Herbert B. Walker, Los Angeles County. In prison, where Judge Walker's victim is at, he's known as one of the most dirtiest judges ever walked through a courtroom. He's known for fraudulently preparing records after illegally convicting people on perjury testimony. And speaking of this Walker, I'd like to make him known again. He's the same judge who was in retirement, but they went and pulled him back into the court to hear the case of Sirhan. Now Walker is known wherever he's at in police cases, where it's been police brutality, illegal search and seizure. He's the one that always wind up mopping it out. In other words, covering up everything, railroading people. Police is always right, always in his case. Court cases go before him. Lawyers, I recall when I was there with different other clients, would always warn that we don't want to go before Judge Walker with this case. They'd go in with disqualifications or asking other courts to take the case, keep Walker out of the case, especially in cases where people were black.
Finally, McGee forced the world to listen by participating in the Marin Courthouse Rebellion. By the time McGee appeared in the Marin courtroom in August 1970, he had spent 7 years studying law and deluging the courts with writs, petitions, and lawsuits, not only to contest his own illegal conviction, but to protest the racist, systematic violation of the civil and human rights of his fellow inmates. A self-trained legal mind, or jailhouse lawyer, McGee's knowledge of the law has been widely acclaimed by attorneys such as the late Charles Gary and former Attorney General Ramsey Clark, who assisted in McGee's defense. In 1971 pretrial hearings, McGee succeeded in removing 6 judges, halted proceedings with his petitions, and exposed the bias against him, with each denial of his constitutionally guaranteed right to defend himself, a right given to his college-educated co-defendant, Angela Davis.
Head you lose, tail you lose, with a lawyer, what they call a lawyer. This is the game these barbaric and insane fools is playing. They have to come under the skies of always trying to help a people. This is the game. So many people fail to understand this judicial deception game. They have to come under the good guy role, or they will expose themselves to everybody. A lawyer has a position. That is a lawyer's position. He cannot abuse that position. And that's exactly what they consider him as doing, abusing his position to come out and expose slavery of the judicial system. Slavery is something that is being practiced by the system under the color of law, even though it is without legal power or authority. It's being done in a trick bag. Slavery 400 years ago, slavery today. It's the same, but with a new name. They're making millions and millions of dollars off of enslaving blacks, poor whites, and others daily. Peoples who don't even know that they're being railroaded.
McGee was on the witness stand when 17-year-old Jonathan Jackson interrupted the trial of James McClain, accused of assaulting a guard in the wake of San Quentin inmate Fred Billingsley's murder by prison guards. McClain was acting as his own lawyer, presenting inmate witnesses to expose the criminally racist repression of black prisoners when young Jonathan burst into the courtroom with rifles, shotguns, and pistols hidden under a long coat. "Freeze," Jonathan shouted, "we're taking over." As he tossed guns to McClain, William Christmas, and McGee, who decided spontaneously to join the rebellion since he had been illegally and unconstitutionally incarcerated for 7 years. After taking the judge, prosecutor, and 3 jurists as hostages, the brothers headed for a radio station to broadcast to the world the brutal prison conditions and demand the release of the Soledad brothers, John Cluchet, Fleeta Drumgo, and George Jackson, Jonathan's older brother. Operating with courage and calm, even their enemies had to respect. The four insurgents commandeered their hostages out of the courthouse and began their getaway without a hitch.
Jonathan froze the court, and then with the help of the other comrades, they made it all the way to, down the 2 flights, 2 stories down to the parking lot and into the truck. Do you notice that during that period, very little shooting was done? See, I think at one occasion, as they left the building, the pigs fired. Jonathan fired back, and then they retreated. They were just testing them to see if they were willing to, really willing to engage in killing and dying. See? And when they were convinced that they were, then they retreated. I think both sides fired into the air, I must say. But it was a standoff all the way till they got trapped in the truck and until they, confronted the prison pigs, the most vicious pigs on earth, the prison pigs. No regard whatsoever for human life, none.
What Jonathan failed to anticipate was the state's willingness to sacrifice one of its own judges and the lives of anyone else to stop the escape. Before Jonathan could pull out of the parking lot, San Quentin prison guards arrived and opened fire. When the shooting stopped, William Christmas, Jonathan Jackson, James McClain, and Judge Harold Haley had been killed. Prosecutor Gary Thomas was permanently paralyzed, the 3 jurors were relatively unharmed, and McGee was severely wounded by gunfire and was found unconscious.
But they knew before they started shooting that they could only kill these guys by also killing the judge. They'd have to also kill the judge, you know what I'm saying? So, there's no balance there at all. They were to stop, the pigs' intentions were, to stop the liberation move. That move towards liberation for those 3 convicts, those 3 brothers, those 3 guerrillas. To stop that, they were willing to kill a judge. I think that the rest of the judges should be very, very alarmed about that particular situation. Not just the becoming alarmed over the fact that there are people who are willing to risk their lives and fight to be free. That's nothing.
If ever there was one.
You have an ad hoc authority which consists of about 9 people. They're the ones that consider when a man is rehabilitated when he's supposed to go home. In other words, where a person is denied a parole, which is any term of sentence, but he's just denied, and that's all. He cannot appeal before the court with it, unless he's raising certain issues. And when you raise the certain issues, which is maybe laying out prejudice for some reason, well, automatically you're going to have to fall into that set-up thing about where the court don't have no jurisdiction over what the ad hoc authority do. And speaking of this ad hoc authority, they are so barbaric with their acts. They tell the peoples that are like the public, the same people that they claim that's who they're protecting or doing something good for. They tell them that they cannot come around during the times that they're in session to offer any evidence or proof or anything concerning a person's right to be released from prison or his rehabilitation or his non-rehabilitation for the reason that he's illegal in prison. In other words, now you must take that up with the court. This is put into the hands of incompetent people. And blacks that goes before Chicano, Mexican, that maybe go before some white guy that's sitting there. He is out of the police office, or he's a prison guard, or either he's some hooked up with the establishment when he got his job for that other thought. But we go into it a little deeper. He is a person that has never in his life set, even in a black community, not only know anything about it. And this being a fact, how can he know anything about the rehabilitation of a black when he don't even know black? This in itself shows that all of this is just a big slave system that's played off in the name of law on people who have for too long sat and not did something about this. A parole board or any other board should consist of people from a community, a people that is, controlled by not racketeers, but by the community. For this reason, it is impossible for a criminal to rehabilitate a criminal. Trying to help not destroy the country, but save it. You cannot save a country by just going on pretending that you don't see what is happening when you see it.
Ruchell Magee is currently on the main line of Lancaster State Prison doing his 52nd year in California gulags. He's 76 now. And many of those years, of those 52 years, were spent in solitary confinement under tortuous conditions, in spite of having no assault or murder convictions. Please write him at Ruchell Magee, R-U-C-H-E-L-L, Magee, M-A-G-E-E, A92051, D51, P.O. Box 4670, Lancaster, California, 93539. And I'm now going to have a conversation and be interviewed myself by my wonderful board op, Sydney Madison. I'm getting tongue-tied because I'm a little nervous about being interviewed myself. I'm usually at the other end.
And I'm usually in the background. So
right.
We'll both have fun.
Right. It is good for you to finally see how beautiful Sydney is and know that she's not a guy.
So Keely, this event happened over 45 years ago. What are some of the issues that you see are still present and relevant today in 2015?
Great question. Police brutality is just as bad, if not worse. It's hard to say that it's worse because, of course, in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, we didn't have internet and we didn't have social media that gives us instant communications worldwide. So probably the brutality is being better reported today. But they were killing us left and right. I remember that police in New York, I lived in New York many years, police in New York would drive up in Harlem and just shoot up apartment buildings. A lot of people remember Georgia State when they shot into the dormitory. I think it was a dormitory, and shot 2 students dead. Of course, everybody remembers Kent State, where they shot 4 white students that were radical protesters protesting the Vietnam War, and shot them dead, and that was sent shockwaves all over the world. So the brutality and the murder of blacks, browns, and anybody who protested against the racist brutality and murder were also victims.
Like you said, I think the internet and social media definitely made a difference as far as bringing it to the forefront and putting it in front of people's faces. It seems like some people didn't realize it was happening, or didn't want to realize that it was happening. I'm not sure, but now that we have videos after videos and photos and evidence showing the things that are happening, we still don't see it ending. What do you think?
No, well, they're being very blatant, and the police are being exonerated. As you noticed in the Philadelphia MOVE video short that we showed earlier, you know, the chief of the police union, you know, not only sanctioned the beating of Delbert Africa, but we should have shot him dead. I mean, we should have executed him. So this is the mentality that we're dealing with. Philadelphia is notorious for their police. I mean, they bombed the MOVE headquarters in 1985 and killed, you know, 11 people, including 5 children. and burned down 61 row houses, privately owned homes that black people, I'm sure, had worked hard to obtain, you know. So, yeah, they're pretty vicious. And the reason I think that they feel that they can just do it, the police feel they can shoot people dead with no reason, and make up a reason for killing them, is because they know they're going to be exonerated, that they'll be acquitted, you know, just as the three police who were the police who killed the three brothers at Soledad Prison were exonerated, were acquitted. You know, justifiable homicide was so common in the 60s. That's all you heard. Justifiable homicide, that was the verdict. So the whole thing is that they're still killing us with impunity. And we have to demand change.
Right. I read that New York has hired an independent, somebody independent of the police force to investigate all
these killings.
By police in New York State,
right.
But keeping them separate from the actual police departments. Do you think that will make a difference?
It should, and let's hope it does. But time will tell. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah. You know, I'm kind of skeptical myself, because long experience has taught me that going up against this system as is pretty tough. I'm convinced that we have to make revolution. I don't think this system can be reformed. I think George Jackson was very correct when he said fascism has temporarily succeeded under the guise of reform. I think this system is corrupt to the core.
So we should start over.
Yes, absolutely.
How do we do that? I feel like...
it's a tall order.
Right. When I was going to school, we learned a lot about revolutions and the civil rights era and as a thing of the past. And I think as these things are coming to the forefront, especially my peers are starting to see that those issues are still going on and we still have a fight to fight. It's not a fight that's been resolved.
Right. It certainly isn't.
But it seems that not many people know what to do.
Right.
We can raise our voice and we can say, this is wrong, we don't like it. But what do we do?
Okay, that's a very good question, because it's so important. Whenever I talk to young people especially, I say, do what you can do. Every person has something that they can contribute to the struggle for change. And that we have to be the change we're looking for. Mm-hmm. And we have to organize. And we need to start, we have a saying, think globally, act locally. Okay? So in our own neighborhoods, in our own apartment buildings, in our own communities, we have to begin to organize. We have to go to the people, find out what their needs are, and begin to organize around those needs to meet them. That's what Panthers did. Mm-hmm. The headiest time of my life was the very short 2 years I spent in the Black Panther Party before it was kind of wiped out by COINTELPRO, the FBI's counterintelligence program. But in New Haven, we organized, and we, organized the free breakfast program. Of course, Panthers did that all over the country, and forced the contradiction that this public schools, the kids were going hungry, and there were no free food programs, at least in New Haven. And once the Black Panther Party's breakfast program took hold, they realized that they had to do something about it, but it came under attack. And of course, it came under attack largely because it was showing up the government, because we were doing for ourselves and what they should have been providing. But before I get off one of the things I learned in the process of organizing is that a very small group of people can make a huge difference. We lived communally, and we worked together, and there may be about we had about 4 Panther pads. Mine was one of them, and there may have been 4 to 6 people living in each pad. We're making up about 25, 30 Panthers, and we worked 24/7. We have one of the things that I think that young people should do, and I advise all people to do. One of the ways to get started is start having political ed classes or discussion groups in your own homes and begin to discuss the issues and organizing and strategies and tactics and, and one of the, and we did that. We had political ed classes every evening. And then we're up, it's crack of dawn to go feed children, and then all day long, as full-time community organizers, we were out selling the Black Panther newspaper, leafleting for the next rally that we had organized. We organized free clothing drives. We organized a free health clinic that Yale medical school students and doctors and even nurses would staff and come and help out. And of course, Panther chapters all over the country did lots of other things. But the lessons that we learned was that this can be done. If you go to the people and the people teach you what's going on and what their needs are. And then our job is to take the ideas and information we received from the people and organize it and spit it back out in an organized way, So again, one of the things that is very important for us to realize is that we can't go at this monster by ourselves as a group, as Black people, even though, we are probably the most oppressed group ethnically and speaking, because there's one human race, I might remind everyone. But and that's obvious because there's a color spectrum in America, that severe oppression is reserved for darker-skinned peoples, and lighter-skinned peoples have privilege in America. We all know that. It goes unsaid for the most part, but we need to be cognizant of that, and we need to also be clear that when a sister like Sandra Bland is abused, brutalized, locked in a cell, and suddenly turns up dead, and then they say suicide, she hung herself. Not only should we not buy it, but we should think of her as our sister. I don't care what color you are, what ethnicity you are, she's our sister. That could have been you, okay? I certainly identified when they stopped her car, I said, oh my goodness, that could have been me. Could have been my daughter, my sister. It's bad news for us to not feel, and I hope we haven't gotten to the point where we don't feel for other people. We don't feel the grief of these murders. Of course, we have to protect ourselves to some extent because they're killing. There's so many murders. I mean, the Malcolm X grassroots organization came up with a study and a survey. They did a survey and came up with a Black person is murdered by police or vigilantes every 28 hours, and now it seems to have been reduced. It's even less than that because it's happening so frequently now. So I can't get over this young man who was, his name won't come to me just now, it may come to me later, who was shot in his car. I mean, just shot in the head, just point blank, for no reason. These things are happening way too frequently. Panthers learned that, and Jonathan Jackson's example taught us that we can't go up against these heavily armed military creeps with guns. It's not going to work. And but we do have to have strategies that will hit them hard, and their bottom line is always money. So I think that we should hit them where it hurts the most, and that's in their pocketbooks. I believe strongly in boycotting and divesting and all that, marching, protesting, striking. Youth have some creative ideas of what to do, and I think you should, be creative and keep, and come up with really good ideas for how we can disrupt this system, I mean, and I really feel strongly that also that with these, since the Supreme Court came down with this Citizens United decision, what a euphemism, Citizens United, right? So, which basically unleashes tons of money into the electoral process, and the multi-billionaire Koch brothers, KOCH brothers, are practically bankrolling the whole election and buying the candidates and selling them to us. So, I think we should boycott the elections. I think that we should demand universal health care. I think we should demand universal education. We should demand affordable housing and a guaranteed income. All the things, the basics that people need to live. We need on-site child care that is affordable, if not free, to those who can't afford it. Because it's just, the people are suffering so much today. I cannot stand rolling past people sitting on sidewalks with cups and no place to go. You're starting to see tents sitting on sidewalks. I mean, with people living in these little tents on sidewalks in a city as rich as San Francisco, it's an outrage.
Yeah, I saw just a few, maybe 2 months ago, I saw a homeless man laying on the street. He was it wasn't a main street, he went up the street, and I had just parked, and an officer on a bicycle rode past him and arrested him, and he was just like, what am I being arrested for? And because he didn't put his hands behind his back to be arrested, he wasn't following orders, so he was arrested for that.
Yeah.
But where was this homeless man supposed to go?
Right.
What?
Yeah.
Where is he
exactly.
supposed to go? Yeah,
I was in a protest, earlier this week, led by WRAP, the Western Regional Alliance Project, and they're a great homeless coalition led by Paul Bowden, and he was there to speak, and we've had him on our program. You remember Paul, and we marched and rallied at Union Square, and I learned more bad news from the speakers, and that is that the sit-lie laws are being enforced, and it basically says to homeless people, you can't sit down, you can't lie down, and you can't stand in one place. So you're basically supposed to keep moving. We're human beings. Right. We're not robots. We have become so inhumane as a society. Are we ever going to get our humanity back, for goodness sakes, if we keep losing it? It's really, really sad commentary on this social system.
Yeah. What led you to want to start making a change? Like, did you always want to do that, or was there something that happened?
It's interesting. I've always been a bit altruistic, but my first 19 years, my altruism was rooted in Christianity, and I wanted to be like Jesus. So, got me admitting this on TV. But I read 2 books, Thomas Paine's Age of Reason and Sigmund Freud's Future of an Illusion. And they changed my mind about religion. And later on, I got a job working for the, I was always, I actually worked with handicapped kids when I was about in puberty, and I did a lot of volunteering. As a teenager, I volunteered and to cook for servicemen on Sundays and things. So that came in handy when I was the breakfast program coordinator in New Haven. Quantity cooking skills. But when I was working for the government's so-called war on poverty, Johnson, and they've been dragging him out again and trying to act like he was all that. The war on poverty was really designed to pacify the militants, essentially. And what I was assigned as an organizer to one of the black neighborhoods in New Haven, Newhallville, and the people taught me what it is, what was going on, and I had seen poverty as a child, real poverty, but I was seeing it again as a young kind of petty bourgeois worker, and so I kind of rolled up my sleeves, so to speak, and got busy, and we kind of organized those of us who were working for CPI, Community Progress, Inc., which was actually the pilot program of the War on Poverty for the nation. There were 7 neighborhoods, and they had carved it up and were pitting one against the other, and those of us who were working in the individual neighborhoods began to collaborate. And we were going to meetings, and we weren't getting paid, but we became active because it was important. We were going to healthcare meetings, education meetings, housing meetings. Lead paint poisoning was an issue. And so we came up with the idea of 7 together. And they had a fit, and they ran me out of there. So once they did that, the Panthers, I'd been seeing Panthers at the meetings, and Panther had come from the West Coast to set up, to organize the breakfast program, which I mentioned earlier. And so Dougie Miranda and Robert Webb of the Panther Party, Dougie was the area captain, came over to my house one day with a red book and recruited me into the party. And I joined, and what really made me commit my life to revolution was the murder of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark on December 4th, 1969, in a most blatant murder, a premeditated, conspiratorial murder. And his family eventually won a multi-million-dollar settlement, but, so what, But that committed my life. They'll shoot us in our beds while we're asleep and have an agent planted to make sure you're drugged so you don't wake up. I mean, come on. Yeah. It was vicious. So, yeah, I'm committed.
Quickly, what do you feel was one of your biggest accomplishments so far?
Oh.
One.
One. Oh, wow. Besides my giving birth to 2 kids? 'Cause,
in addition.
Okay. Let's see. Wow, that's a good question that I can't think of an answer to.
You can get back to me.
Okay, well, ask me another. Okay.
Let's see. We have 2 minutes left. What are you working on now?
Well, besides doing Freedom is a Conscious Struggle twice a month, it's a lot of work. I don't have a staff, although I've had help from you and thank goodness from Andrew, and lately, mostly it's just been me. So that's a lot of work, and I'm a news junkie, so I try to keep up. I haven't been doing as much writing as I was doing earlier because I have a lot of personal problems and stuff, but I want to get back into writing more too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Trying to think of that question just blows me away. I'm coming up blank.
No problem.
Okay.
Well, we have about 40 seconds left if you want to close out.
Oh yes, let me do that. I'm not even paying attention to the time. Let me I'll give a special thanks to Hans Bennett, Andrew Montoya, and Sydney Madison for production assistance, and thanks to Mama Ayana Mashama and Michael Gallio for narration on the archive tape. Thank you for joining us, and be sure to tune in August 21st, Thursday at 5 p.m., same time, same station, for our second Black August special. Thank you for joining us on Freedom is a Constant Struggle. I'm Kilu Nyasha for Bayvac Commons.